In this clip, John and I are talking about the Smithsonian history and how the MAGA crew apparently wants to Marie Kondo the entire museum. We break down what this says about privilege, politics, and the desperate need to control the narrative. Jump into the comments with your thoughts and hit that subscribe button so we can keep having these conversations, challenging each other, and making it through this madness together.
Well, speaking of performative nonsense, one of the other stories that caught my attention this week was the shit show and what he is doing with respect to the Smithsonian museums. And woke, again, raises its ugly head because they are offended by a lot of the exhibits that are in the Smithsonian. So they're taking an axe to a lot of our treasured Smithsonian exhibits and saying, okay, this is good, this is bad. What say you about that?
I mean, it's consistent. Look at the schools. We go back to that. We've already changed the curriculum where we have textbook committees looking at things. No, we don't want this. We don't want this. We have to have this. We're getting rid of these books. And so we're censoring, which is hilarious to me in a not really way, that we collectively censor things that don't align with whomever's in power, right? But we want to have this culture where we can say anything. We can do anything. We have freedom of speech. If I want to have the Proud Boys out there doing whatnot within the Bendigo, that's great. But let's not make sure that we're not teaching a book that we find offensive.
Well, think about this, and let's look at some of the things from the Smithsonian that they take issue with. And this is reported on the White House's official website on August 21st of this year. The National Museum of African American History and Culture debuted a series that educate people on a society that privileges white people and whiteness, defining so-called white dominant culture as ways white people and their traditions, attitudes, and ways of life have been normalized over time, and portraying the nuclear family, work ethic, and intellect as white qualities rooted in racism. They have a problem with that. The second thing they have a problem with is
they have the problem with truth.
Hold on, it gets better. As part of its campaign to stop being wealthy, pale, and male.
My favorite adjective, male.
Wow.
That's in my profile, looking for wealthy, pale, and male.
Jesus. As a part of his campaign to stop being wealthy, pale, and male, otherwise your tagline, the National Portrait Gallery featured a choreographed modern dance performing, detailing, and commissioned an entire series to examine American portraiture and institutional history through the lens of historical exclusion. I know I'm not going to read through all of these, but it seems to me that they took a view that if it was depicting white folk in a non-flattering way or unflattering,
they close everything, right?
If it championed Latinos, if it championed any Title IX or individuals who were LGBTQI, if it championed a lot of things about slavery, and they came out a couple of weeks ago and said slavery wasn't all bad.
I mean, one time where did we get pig's feet? You got some pig's feet from it.
Yeah,
Could it possibly be all bad? We're pickling pig's feet.
So it was like, why can't we bring the joy? Why can't we talk about...
Why can't we bring the joy from slavery? So was this the Kanye? I'm just trying to understand. Who came up with this marketing campaign?
I don't know.
The joy of slavery.
It's the joy.
Yes.
It's the joy of slavery. So you guys need to talk about how wonderful slavery was, because you wouldn't be able to identify your wealthy, pale, and male.
Oh, wealthy, pale, and male, yeah.
So you wouldn't have your wealthy, pale, and male if it wasn't for slavery.
Maybe I can have wealthy, dark, and male. I mean, what's wrong with that? I'm for that too. Equal opportunity.
I don't know.
This is ridiculous. John, please, I'm going to be quiet because I need to hear this, and everybody needs to hear this.
No, so
I just want to hear about the joy of slavery. I just love this. The joy of cooking, the joy of slavery. You got songs. You got Negro spirituals. You were out there doing Negro spirituals and eating pig's feet. This was amazing for us.
And I'm reading some of this. It's the National Museum of African Art displayed an exhibit on works of speculative fiction that bring to life an immersive, feminist, and sacred aquatopia inspired by the legend of...
what are these words? Are they made up? Like what? These aren't even GRE words. I've never heard these before.
The National Museum of American Latino characterizes the Texas Revolution as a massive defense of slavery waged by white Anglo-Saxon settlers against anti-slavery Mexicans fighting for freedom, not a Texas war of independence from Mexico. And then they took an issue at Fauci. And they said
Him personally.
anything depicting Anthony Fauci should be removed.
Get his little ass out of here. I'm sick of it.
Hold on. The other one
What?
is an exhibit at the American History Museum depicts migrants watching Independence Day fireworks through an opening in the U.S.-Mexico border wall and says America's founders feared non-white immigration. So this is what I say. This is like you, Black Karen, went into the museum.
Labels and everything. I was Marie Kondo in it. Keep gone.
And they label everything that offended them.
So they're just going to go ahead and close down the museum. Because the Black History Museum, the Smithsonian in DC. So I went through it and I love the way that journey goes through. So you just start off in the slave ship and you just make your way up until the last time I was there, it was Obama's, right? So we made our way up, but it told this story, this narrative of the journey of Black people coming from Africa and then the journey of them throughout the different decades. One of the things I found fascinating is I went with a group of girls and, it's so huge that you kind of go your own way, then you come together. There's a huge, beautiful cafe, and you kind of come together and you talk about certain things. And it was that playbook that was in there, right? So it was this slavery playbook that it's still the number one bestseller on the New York Times doing it. That was enlightening to me because you can look at some of the things that were touted back in those days and then how it still resonates today. And so that whole journey of Black people coming into this country and the things that we've endured, I would think that if you're looking at it from the lens of disparaging white people or making them feel uncomfortable, I would just think that there would be a eviction sign on the front door. Like, okay, anybody, would we like to have a Krispy Kreme here now? Or maybe another Cracker Barrel? Like the whole thing, because our journey is rooted in the white experience. Like we didn't have a lot of autonomy, except when we were pickling pig's feet in those beautiful slavery days, apparently. But other than that, a lot of the things that we were afforded, a lot of the things that we could acquire, whether it was credit, whether it was education, whether it was places to live, was at the mercy of a white person. I don't understand how you don't see the intersection of those choices and our journey. I'm confused.
Because I think that white folk traditionally have a hard time sitting in their own shit for an extended period of time. In a lot of ways, we're seeing it with the everyone gets a trophy mentality, or yes, we are, or the safe room space where we can't.
Okay, I'm not going to stop. And I'm forging it. How do you align those two?
Because we
have difficult conversations. We don't have to be mean when we have the conversation.
I'm not saying being mean. I'm saying if we're having a conversation about what has transpired in history, individuals will say, well, it wasn't me. I didn't benefit from that, or I'm not doing it. And you're not thinking about the fact that, yeah, you may not have done it, but your uncle or great uncle or granddaddy or someone benefited from that. And so if we're having the conversation that, yes, slavery happened, 300-400 years ago, that's fine. But we also have to look at the ramifications of what that meant for the different cultures.
And not what it meant for past tense, what it means now. And I think that you can say as a white person, since I play one on TV, just kidding, I don't, that you can say this happened and there's still benefits, there are still things that resonate from that experience that are still today. And again, I'll go back to education, getting loans, getting access to different types of jobs and representation in the media, because there was a foundation. It may not have been you, it may not have been your grandmother, a foundation of racism that carries through. And if you don't talk about it, you're not going to see it. I'm not saying you're a racist, Chad, but I'm just saying you're benefited from that. For me to say, well, I'm not a slave. Well, my ancestors were a slave, and that journey has impacted where I am today. And for me to say, well, that was in the past, I'm done with it. That's ridiculous. Your past makes up who you are.
A couple things. One, I agree with you with respect to decisions that were made or actions that occurred centuries ago still having ramifications today. A couple weeks ago, we talked about the Mecca, and the Mecca would not exist but for slavery, but for things that happened. And we've been able to obviously carve out a nice history and legacy because of that. From that standpoint, you also think about, and you'll have some folks say, well, I did not benefit from, or my family did not benefit. Yes, your family did, because what happens is when you start thinking about generational wealth, if your dad or granddad or great grandfather was able to get a factory job, making a decent income, he or she was then probably able to get a loan at a bank to be able to buy a home. The equity in that home more than likely helped you afford to go to a college or a university, or when they died, they were able to pass along the equity in that home to you. And that gave you a leg up. And so from that standpoint, you benefited not only from that tangible action, but you also benefited from unspoken things that were happening in the culture where only certain things could happen or would be deemed appropriate for white folk. Only certain activities, only certain opportunities would be given unless you looked a certain way. The thing that struck me as very interesting as I was going through this list of grievances that MAGA has with respect to Smithsonian,
Justice.
is probably about 70% of this list is aimed squarely at Latinos.
Which I was actually going to bring that up. I find that fascinating with your voting and your alignment. How do you like your decisions?
Some would say, hey, for those that are breaking the law, I don't have a problem with it.
I hear what you're saying, and I can say the same thing. And I think that one of the things that has been brought up to me and that I hadn't considered, I always said, I had this journey, I had this whatever, because I grew up in white societies. Somebody challenged me and they said, do you think it might be more classism than where you grew up? And I was like, hold up now, let me think about that. Because we did grow up in a household where we didn't want for things. Speaking truth, I didn't have difficulty with things. And so my appreciation for certain things, whether it was attending university, whether it was doing anything, was different from someone that may have had to struggle. And so I couldn't see that. I didn't understand what was afforded to me until way late in life, because I always said, well, I grew up in white societies and blah, blah. No, it also could be that intersection of class as well. We were talking about land and acquiring land and how that allowed some people access to different things. One of the things that my great-grandfather had in Oklahoma is he had hundreds of acres of land. And during the Depression, he started selling it off. And my grandfather was like, absolutely not. And he came and he was like, no more selling of this land. And so in his will, he put in that no one can sell the land. And so we have, I think, like 160 acres for that. It's dispersed between his siblings and then their kids. And so I told my son, I said, hey, we've got this land, 80 acres, it's 80 acres. And I said, we have this land and you can never sell it. So that's just, you can never do it. So he says, oh, it's our legacy. And I said, that's exactly right. It is our legacy. So we are not selling this land. My grandmother has a bunch of land that she left to my mom, which, it'll probably be left to her children. And that's the thing. We're not selling that. I don't plan to set foot on a farm, but that is our land, because it's always a comfort in the event that something happens. I have a place to go. But I never considered that. I never thought about the headwinds is it headwinds or tailwinds that I got because of tailwinds of where I grew up and how I grew up. But it makes a difference. And it makes a difference when you start to say, well, all they have to do is work harder. Well, I studied a lot. I was a bookworm. And so if you would just do that, then you can get to university too. No, that's not true, because there are other things that were going on in my family. I had two parents that were very active. I had a mother that didn't have to work outside of the home. There are things that, because of the structure and where I grew up, allowed me access to more things. And for me to say, well, I just worked harder, that is a lie and a disservice to everything that was afforded to me. So to tie this back in, for white people to say, I just worked hard and none of those things had anything to do with my success, it's a lie. It is just a lie. And for then to say for Black people, well, you just didn't work hard enough. Well, you know what? You created this systemic racism that resonates throughout history. And there's a foundation of it that still oppresses some people, whether it's education, where they live, their zip code. Those things still matter.
I think that one of the things that stands out is in something that you talked about in terms of legacy and how this administration is trying to sort of cherry pick what the legacy looks like or what the legacy will be and how the legacy will be remembered. And that seems to be a driving force for this entire administration this cycle. We're trying to rewrite history so that, you don't know about the bad shit that's happened, that you don't know about the bad shit that we're doing. All you know about is what it is that we're doing or have done, and the people who benefited from it are all happy, and there were no grievances, and everyone got along, and everyone sung Kumbaya, and we all made money, and we all did, we were just one big melting pot of
pickle pig feet.
You're going to stop making references about this wonderful delicacy called pickled pig feet that you've never tried, but you should.
I'm sure.
Again, the administration is doing a job of gaslighting individuals about what it is that we should care about. But I think the thing that bothers me most is individuals who think that they have the right to determine what it is that history should.
But they do have the right to determine. They have the power. They shouldn't, but they do.
They don't. They have the right to dictate certain things. They can pull the funding from the museum and say, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, we're going to pull. But I don't see them going in and destroying exhibits. I think that's a red line. That's a line that's too far.
Because we know that this administration, they can see lines. They are like, my goodness, here comes a line. Okay, we better stop. Because we've seen that. John, thank you for sharing that, because we've seen that happen in a never has happened way, but yes.
Yeah, you know what? I take your point on that, and maybe I'm naive to think that they will not go in and do stuff.
They can do stuff. And you were talking about people like doing things. I think they will do things, and they can gaslight the American people because it's comfortable for a lot of people. And when you start to expend political capital on people that don't look like you, that you won't benefit from, for me, that speaks to your character. If you say, you take a deep breath and you're like, I'm going to spend some political capital on this little Black girl or this Black woman in this thing, it's not going to benefit me. And there could be backlash, but I'm going to stand up, and you do it quietly and you do it with strength and you use your voice. That means something to me. But a lot of people won't do it because it's uncomfortable. There's a risk involved in that. You could be labeled wokeness. You could be labeled a leftist. You can be labeled a tree-hugging whatever. You could be labeled that, and it can have...
A race hustler. Yeah, you could be a race hustler.
You could be a race hustler. You could be a race hustler, John. I mean, there are things that happen that could impact not only you, but your family. It can impact those things. Even for me, being a Black woman, I have to make a decision. Am I going to stand up? What's important to me? Is a nice bank account important to me, or being a decent person important to me? And I always, even though I choose violence, I'm always going to choose the decent person. Always.
Thank you again for spending time talking to us this week. We know that you could be spending your time doing a lot of things. As always, take some time this week to do something nice for yourself. And while you're at it, make some time to do something nice for someone else. Until we talk to you, we'll speak to you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to another lively conversation in I Took Your Point. This podcast is a production of the SME LLC Media Group. All rights reserved. If you are enjoying the show, hit the subscribe button in the top right corner. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and check out past episodes. Until next time, take care and be well.
What's got them bangers?
Thank you again for spending time talking to us this week. We know that you could be spending your time doing a lot of things. As always, take some time this week to do something nice for yourself. And while you're at it, make some time to do something nice for someone else. Until we talk to you, we'll speak to you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to another lively conversation in I Took Your Point. This podcast is a production of the SME LLC Media Group. All rights reserved. If you are enjoying the show, hit the subscribe button in the top right corner. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and check out past episodes.
Until next time, take care and be well.